بالظبط. واو what a great information. طيب هنبدأ بقى الحكاية من أول وجديد. Welcome to Canada your new home. النهاردة معانا مارك غالي. ميرسي جدا يا مارك عشان انت اديتنا من وقتك النهاردة علشان نسجل الحلقة المهمة دي في Welcome to Canada your new home.
Thank you so much for having me. طبعا I hope ان انا I can be of service to you guys.
احنا دايما في Welcome to Canada your new home بنقول لكم على كل الحقوق وكل الخدمات اللي كندا بتقدمها لكم. النهاردة مارك هيكلمنا عن واجب وطني وقومي لازم نقوم بيه. هو لما يجينا جواب ويقول لك انت بقيت بارت من هيئة المحلفين في القضاء الكندي هنا، فمارك هيفهمنا نظام القضاء في اونتاريو كندا، وكمان هيفهمنا نعمل ايه لما يجينا الجواب بتاع انتخابنا نكون عضو من هيئة المحلفين. قول لنا الجوب بقى بتاعتك، واحنا طبعا فخورين بكل عملك والسيرفيسز بتاعتك للكوميونتي، فاحنا عايزين نعرف الناس على مارك غالي.
Thank you. So I currently work in the Superior Court of Justice here in Brampton, Ontario, Canada. I work as what's called a court registrar. A court registrar is essentially like a helper of the court, or زي مساعد المحكمة أو مساعد القضاء. القاضي أو القاضية اللي بتسمع القضية أنا طبعا بكون زي مساعد ليهم، وبحضر يعني كل الملفات وكده اللي هيتسمع في اليوم ده قدام القاضي أو القاضية. وكمان في لي عندي دور كبير في الجوري ديوتي اللي احنا هنتكلم عليها النهارده. والنهارده كمان هنقول لكم طبعا شويه عن السيستم هنا بتاعت الكورت المحكمه، وبحيث انك تبقوا عارفين شويه عن البلد هنا اللي انتوا جيتوا فيها.
Thank you so much يا مارك. وطبعا يعني مارك بيدينا من خبرته، ودي خدمة للكوميونتي مارك بيقدمها لنا النهاردة. وطبعا لو احنا محتاجين اي legal advice طبعا لازم نروح عند اللوير وناخد استشارة.
Yeah, just to clarify, you know, none of the information in this video is meant to serve as legal advice for anybody. You know, as much as I would love to help, I'm not a lawyer myself, at least not yet, inshallah. أي حد ليه عنده أي سؤال لموقفه شخصيا يعني بالأخص لازم طبعا ياخد legal advice بتاع professionals اللي هم lawyers والباراlegals هنا في كندا وهنا في أونتاريو، بحيث إن هم يقدروا ياخدوا الادفايس تبع personal situation بتاعتهم if they have any specific questions. I'm just giving some general information and based on my experience here in my work. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Today we're eager to learn a little bit more about the justice system in Canada, especially Ontario, because this is a province that we live in.
Yes,
so if you can give us an idea about this.
Yes, of course. طبعا كمان هحاول على قد ما اقدر اتكلم بالعربي عشان اساعدوني الاول عشان انا مولود هنا في كندا، فممكن زي ما تقولي هتكلم بالعربي المكسر شويه.
احنا فخورين بيك وبالعربي بتاعك عشان تبقى عارف.
ربنا يخليكي تعيشي. ثانك يو. فالنظام هنا في كندا ليها ترتيب وليها درجات، بالاخص يعني هنا في اونتاريو اكتر حاجه في 3 درجات، في وطبعا كل درجه اعلى من الثانيه او اللي قبلها. هنا في اونتاريو في الأونتاريو كورت اوف جاستس دي الاولانيه، الدرجه الثانيه اللي هي الأونتاريو سوبيريور كورت اوف جاستس اللي هي الكورت اوف جاستس اللي اعلى شويه، ودي اللي انا شغال فيها. وفي الثالثه اللي هي the Ontario Court of Appeal. الابيل لو انا افتكرها الاستئناف.
تمام برافو.
الحمد لله. كل درجه بتسمع من بعض القضايا مخصوص يعني ليها، والقرار اللي بيجي من درجه من الكورت هنا او المحكمه بتبقى بتطبق اللي تحتها. ومثلا بعد الثالثه اللي هي الأونتاريو كورت اوف ابيل في اللي هي السوبريم كورت اوف كندا اللي هي على البلد كلها. فدي اللي بتطبق زي قوانين جديده تبع الكومن لا سيستم هنا في كندا، بما يوازي ان اي مره بيبقى قضيه يعني ممكن تغير القانون هنا بتطبق عن طريق النظام او الترتيب الدرجات المحكمه دي. فمش بس اي حاجه بتبقى قانون جديد وبتطبق وخلاص يعني. هي دي نظام شويه من الكورت سيستم الجاستس سيستم بتاعتنا هنا.
حلو قوي حلو قوي. You made it easy for us to understand.
I
Thank
hope.
you.
أتمنى.
هنتكلم دلوقتي عن موضوع هيئة المحلفين or jury duty.
Yes.
امتى يبعتوا لي او ينتخبوني او يدعوني اني اكون part of the jury؟
سؤال حلو. يعني هنا في أونتاريو الجوري ديوتي أي حد ممكن يطلب، لكن if they meet the certain requirements, okay? First of all, the pool of prospective jurors, or يعني people that might become jurors, is generated every year from the census data here in Ontario and in Canada. Based on that, you'll get a prospective juror questionnaire in the mail.
Okay.
Now that's going to be the first letter or the first أول جواب يعني اللي جيلك. طبعا لازم نجاوب كل الأسئلة اللي موجودة يعني حقيقي truthfully ونبعتها تاني. هي دايما بتبقى موجودة بالظرف اللي تترجع بيها. بعد كده نستنى هيجيلنا طلب تاني، بحيث ان هم كانوا واخدين البيانات اللي احنا بعتناها وخلاص. مش معنى كده ان الجواب جايب الاسئله اللي اتطلبت مننا ان احنا نروح المحكمه وكده. فلسه هيجي لنا في اي وقت تاني اول ما يكون في احتياج لجوري هيجي لنا جواب تاني. دي اللي هي السامنز اللي بتقول you have been summoned for jury duty. ان في دلوقتي طلب لجوري وانت تيجي لهذه المحكمه وهيدوك كل البيانات، واي لو عندك اي اسئله في رقم ممكن تطلبها وكذا كذا.
حلو قوي. يعني الجواب الاولاني ده كانه بيلم بس المعلومات وبيضمن وجودي وان انا
بالزبط.
هكون مشارك، ولكن الجواب التاني هو الاكشوال بقى الفعلي يعني.
بالظبط. وللنقطه دي كمان الجواب الاولاني اللي بيجمع المعلومات دي تبع الناس الموجوده في البلد يعني بتبقى بناء على السنسس اللي بتتعمل.
تعداد
تقريبا
السكان.
هي دي بالظبط.
أوكي.
فبناء على السنسس هي دي اللي generates the need for, okay, we have this many people that could be added to the jury pool of people that we could ask to become jurors. Everybody is potentially sent a prospective juror questionnaire اللي هي الأسئلة اللي بتيجي في الجواب. But there are certain requirements that are needed in order to become a juror. So everybody could potentially get the questionnaire, but not everybody will be able to serve as a juror. And so those requirements, which we'll outline now, for example, you have to be a Canadian citizen.
Okay.
You have to be 19 years of age at least or older. And furthermore, there are certain professions في من بعض الأشغال ما يقدروش يكونوا يعملوا الخدمة دي.
زي ايه الاشغال اللي ممكن ما تعملش الخدمة دي؟
Good question. مثلا زي المحاميين عشان من بعض الشغل اللي مطلوب من الجuror يبص على الevidence اللي اتقدمت في القضية ويبص عليها impartially، يعني من غير ما يفضل حد او من غير اي تفكير يعني زيادة. المفروض زي ما هي بتتقدم المفروض هو ده المطلوب من الجuror، يبص عليها وياخد ويعمل قرار، يدي قرار. بالظبط. وهي ميزة الجوري ديوتي انها ناس عادية يعني من البلد زي اللي اترفعت عليه او اترفعت عليها القضية.
تمام.
فهي دي ميزة الجوري ديوتي.
حلو جدا. في اي requirements تانية؟ يعني خدنا الكنديان سيتيزن، الايج، وخدنا كمان الجوب، وايه تاني؟
Because the official languages in Canada here are English and French, you need to be able to understand the language. So in English, most trials are conducted. Sometimes French. I've actually done a criminal trial in French, but it was without a jury. So, you know, depending on the situation, you never know. If you prefer French, you may be required as a French juror.
Okay.
It's rare, but it may happen. You never know. And lastly, it seems maybe a little bit obvious, but you need to be able to hear the proceedings as they're going on. You need to be able to hear what's going on in the courtroom. So usually we ask that if you, for example, have a concern about your hearing is not up to speed or that you would require, the court also has what's called an assistive listening device This is, in essence, kind of like a hearing aid. It will amplify the sound that's in the courtroom, and you'll be able to hear exactly what's going on from any of the witnesses, the judge, the lawyers that are speaking, and so on and so forth.
واو حلو قوي. I will need this service for sure.
I think many of us will. Don't worry about it. There aren't many other requirements. For example, it needs a lot of time depending on the case. Some cases take a week. Some cases may take 3 months. It depends on the case, unfortunately. It requires a lot of time, and we don't want to downplay how important it is to come to jury duty with an open mind. So I always try to tell people, when you get your questionnaire, fill it in as soon as possible. Don't ignore it, because there are certain penalties as well that you could face if you don't do it. Coming from that as well, once you've decided to actually fill it in, remember to treat it as seriously as you would, your job or anything like that. Try to make sure that if you have small children or some other requirements that you feel would take you away from being able to serve as a juror, try to make those arrangements in advance as much as you can. Usually most judges are very understanding of that, and they want to make sure that everybody can serve as a juror. And so it's up to us as Canadian citizens, and for those that are new to Canada, when you are eventually Canadian citizens, it's all of our duty to make sure that we can do what we can to serve as a juror, because it's a very unique part of the Canadian justice system.
كده يبقى احنا عندنا جوابين.
كلهم جوابات هنا.
كله جوابات.
كله جوابات.
الجواب الاولاني بنملى فيه المعلومات كلها، وبعد كده ننتظر الجواب التاني اللي يقول لنا انتوا يعني منتخبين او مختارين علشان تؤدوا الديوتي بتاعتكم دي as a juror.
بالظبط. فزي ما احنا قلنا، الجواب الاولاني اللي تملي كل بياناتك وكده، والجواب التاني هيكون في اي وقت محتاجين فيها جرر. فلما يجيلك الجواب التاني هيقول لك تروحي الكورت هاوس كذا بعنوانه ورقم تليفون لو محتاجة اي مساعدة في حاجة مثلا، عشان طبعا هم بيتمنوا ان كل حد يقدر يخدم الخدمة بتاعته. فلو محتاجين أي مساعدة أو any sort of accessibility services مثلا، طبعا المحكمة بتبقى يعني راضية قوي تساعد الناس اللي محتاجة الحاجات دي.
حلو قوي. يقدروا يساعدونا بقد إيه؟ يعني هعمل إيه في الشغل؟ هعمل إيه في العيال؟ طب لو عندنا مثلا عندي يعني أمراض أو مشاكل صحية، عندي ستريس، هعمل إيه؟ إلى أي مدى بيساعدونا؟
Great question. I'll say most of this in English, and wherever I can, I'll say it in Arabic.
It's okay,
a lot of people have a lot of concern that they are going to face some sort of hardship by serving as a juror. That could be, for example, because of their health, just as you mentioned, childcare needs, or for example, if they're going to be needing to take time off of their normal work and things like that. So we'll take each of those one at a time, and we'll explain what the court does and how the process works for those. By law, your employer is required to actually give you time off from work in order to serve as a juror. Now, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they will pay you that time. That would be something you'd have to ask specifically with your management team or human resources department through your employer. So that's regarding the hardship of taking time off work. Some judges also, depending on the case, they may also order and make a court order that each juror, for each day of the trial, for example, they can make an order that you will be paid a certain amount of dollars for each day that the jury is required. That way you don't face or you don't experience as much hardship by serving as a juror. So that's next, for example, some people have a concern with childcare. With childcare, again, try to treat this as if you are, coming in for a job. Not everybody can come up with childcare. Judges usually understand that some people don't have any options. Some people, when they are coming to jury duty, they understand that they are the only person here. They don't have a relative that can look after them or arrange for a babysitter or anything. So it is usually the same time as normal working hours. So you're not going to have to be staying, for example, until 7 p.m. just to be a juror. The only exception is when the jury is making its decision and they're doing what's called their deliberation. So when they're coming up with the choice of whether to find somebody guilty or not guilty, and they're deciding and debating and deliberating that's when you cannot go home. You're taken, and the court staff, they watch over you and they make sure you're safe. Unfortunately, you can't communicate with your family or anything. They take your phone, because that part is to make sure that the process is not affected by anything else. You're not given any outside information or anything to that effect. You're only deciding the case based on the evidence that was given in court. Like I said, most of the time you're serving as a juror, if you'd be able to make the arrangement for something like childcare or any sort of assistance for work, you most likely will be able to make it work for jury duty as well. Now, for example, jury duty and the court also runs in the summer and throughout the year. So if it's, for example, going to be easier to arrange for you to be a juror when you don't have to make those childcare needs, some judges, depending on the situation or the circumstance, they may be able to assist in that regard. But for the most part, try to consider it as you would a job, and try to make the same arrangements you would for work as you would with jury duty. And finally, some people may be concerned that they don't have, their health is not able to keep them in court or sitting down for a long period of time, things like that. We want to assure you that the court usually is not sitting for any more than about an hour and a half at any time. So usually court starts at 10 o'clock. That's when the judge walks into the courtroom, and the jury is present, all the lawyers are present, everybody is there and ready to go for 10 a.m. And usually there's a break at about 11:30 for about 15 to 20 minutes. So you're going to have a break that you can sit down, grab a snack or something to drink, and the court takes care of jurors very, very well. You'll have food and beverage. You can also bring your own, things like that. And there's about an hour to an hour and a half lunch from about 1 o'clock to 2 or 2:15. And lastly, there's a break in the afternoon, usually at about 3:30 or so. So rest assured, just as you would at work, you'd have your regular breaks and lunch. The same goes for when you're in court serving as a juror. Yes, very much so, actually. Right now, the only thing that's not going ahead and is not proceeding is actually jury duty and jury trials. So for these types of cases, make sure you keep an eye out in your mail. You may get a summons for whenever those trials resume again, when it's safer to do so. And that's regarding jury duty. But right now, everything else that doesn't require jurors is proceeding either by Zoom or video conference court, or teleconference. So you're only just calling in using a phone. So the court has adapted greatly, just as the needs of the public change and the current health situation regarding COVID-19 changes. The court is also adapting in order to make sure it can serve its community as well.
مارك، عندنا حاجة بقى مسكونسبشن عند ان كلنا لما بنبقى جايين جديد يقولك حد كح في وشك روح سوهم ارفع عليه قضية. حد قالك صباح الخير روح ارفع عليه قضية. ايه النظام ده؟ مش هينفع كده.
I know exactly what you mean. It's important for us to remember, here in Canada, we're very much a country of diversity and inclusion. So let's think about that before we approach any sort of situation like that. But that doesn't mean that nothing will ever be done in court. There's always going to be courts running. There's always going to be, situations that need to be adjudicated. Now, the process here in Canada, we have a few different ways that these kinds of issues can be resolved. So we'll discuss 4 of them. So the first one, which is probably the most obvious, اللي هي نرفع قضية على حد. So that can be either a civil case or, for example, if it's a criminal case, the government is essentially saying that you have violated this criminal offense, and so that's the criminal case that's started. طبعا we hope nobody ever has to be in that unfortunate situation, but exactly. So like I said, the first one is if there is a lawsuit before the court. That's the actual proceedings that are raised in court. You file a lawsuit and you go through the process of the court system. That's only one part. Now, the second part is obviously if you hire a lawyer, and a lot of the work that lawyers do is actually most involved outside of court. So, if you have a lawyer and the other party has a lawyer, يعني مثلا لكح عليكي عنده محامي وانتي عندك المحامية بتاعتك أو المحامي بتاعك, they can help discuss how to settle the case. So this is called settlement. Cases are always settled whether it's out of court or in court. So either a case is settled through a trial in court, that's the first part we talked about, or it's settled outside of court where you and your lawyer come up with what's going to make you whole again, what's going to allow you to settle this case. Okay. And those are obviously done with discussions with the other side and their lawyer and so on and so forth. The last two are kind of like a hybrid between number one and number two. These processes are called alternative dispute resolution methods. So basically they mean different ways, alternative ways that you can resolve a dispute. So these two methods usually involve a third party, just like the first one that has the judge. These two also involve a very experienced person in that field of law. These two processes are called arbitration and mediation. Now, these two methods are almost kind of, like we said, hybrid between going to court and settling outside of court. But in the case of, for example, mediation, this involves a very experienced person in that field, and they give you almost like tips on how to resolve this case. They talk to your lawyer, or you, for example, if you don't have a lawyer, and the other side, and they try to help everybody come from here closer together, okay? Perfect. Closer to resolving this case. And then arbitration is where also, again, somebody that's very experienced in that field will listen to everything and kind of act similar to a judge. They will impose a decision. They'll actually say, this is the decision, and this is what will happen. This is how the case is settled. Whereas mediation is more sort of discussion and friendly, and you can take it or leave it. But arbitration is more, no, this is the decision that will be given, and this is how the case will be settled.
Wow, amazing. Okay. Let me just, from a previous experience, we got to tell you guys ان settlement is an easy way لأنه أرخص في المصاريف, لأن اللويرز والتايم اللي الكيسز بتاخده في الكورت بتبقى وقت طويل, وكمان المصاريف بتاع المحامين هنا غالية جدا. فيعني لو في أي مجال للسيتلمنت ده طبعا بيبقى أحسن كتير لكل الأطراف, وربنا ما يجيبش خناقات يعني. بالظبط. وصدقيني كمان حتى القضاء لما بيسمعوا ان القضية يعني اتعملت بره الكورت, يعني قد ما هم يعني سابوا لهم الشغل يعني اللي بقيه اليوم, بيبقوا فرحانين لما يسمعوا كده, عشان بيبقوا عايزين طبعا الناس يعني ما يحتاجوش يصرفوا قد كده على الفاضي يعني. فزي ما انت بتقولي يعني God willing, everybody can settle their matters outside of court. امين. طبعا زي ما مارك قال لنا ان كندا من اجمل البلاد اللي فيها الناس كتيره بتتعايش في سلام. اساسا بلد مليانه كل الحضارات وكل الجنسيات, والناس كلها بتتعايش في سلام وفي هارموني. فان شاء الله يعني ما يكونش في اي مشاكل ونستمتع بحياتنا هنا. ونشكر مارك جدا النهارده على كل المعلومات اللي انت عطيتها لنا النهارده يعني, والواجب القومي والوطني علينا ان احنا لما يجي لنا جواب يستدعينا ان انا اكون جور او يعني اقدم الواجب الوطني بتاع كوني بارت في هيئة المحلفين, ان انا ما اتاخرش. فاحنا ميرسي جدا على كل النصايح اللي انت قدمتها لنا النهارده يا مارك.
I can't thank you enough for having me, and thank you again for all the work that you do. I hope that it was helpful, and if there's any questions that you have, there are a lot of resources that you can find online regarding jury duty, the court system. I'm sure these links will be on the screen and available as well. So obviously, please feel free to look at those resources. The ministry and the government, they want to make sure that the public knows and is informed about this process, and that way they can really make sure that everybody has the tools that they need to serve as a juror. So thank you all.
حلو خالص. We're so proud of you. God bless your services and thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you guys.